I'd been gaming with the same guy almost every night for 3 years before he mentioned, right in the middle of a match, the color of the car in my driveway. He said it light, a throwaway line, a little joke about my taste, and his game kept right on going under it. The gunfire, the footsteps, his voice moving through all of it like he'd said nothing at all. I'd never told him what I drove. Not once. Not in 3 years. I went quiet on my end, controller in my hands, and he never even noticed. I'm not going to give you my name. I'm 30. I work overnight IT, so I'm awake and online when the rest of the street is dark and asleep. The guy was a teammate, voice only. 3 years of late nights and bad jokes and covering each other in firefights. The closest thing I had to a best friend, and I had never seen his face or known the city he sat in. People hear that and decide I must have been careless. I wasn't. He never had my name, my street, anything you could type into a map. That's just how it is now. He's far, he's a voice. He's not real the way the people in your house are real. I mean, that's the math everyone runs. It's the exact math he was counting on. Because here's what 3 years of talk actually is. You leak. One harmless thing a night. You mention the team you root for, and honestly, if you're a Steelers fan like me, that's a whole city handed to a stranger in one word. You gripe about the bad intersection on your commute, the one where the light takes forever, and now he has a corner. You laugh about the diner you end up at after a rough shift, half the letters dead on the sign, and that diner sits on a real street where a real person can stand. I never handed him a map. I handed him 3 years of dots, one a night, never two that obviously touched, and he wrote down every single one. After the car, the rest of it started surfacing. He'd mentioned my weather once, weeks earlier, not the city's weather. Mine, rain that was coming down on my street and not where he claimed to be sitting. I'd let it pass at the time, because you let everything pass at the time. Now it just sat there with a weight on it. He knew my hours, too. He used to rib me for logging off the same time every weeknight, regular as a clock, and I'd laughed along, because I am. He hadn't been ribbing me. He'd been taking attendance. And a man who is your attendance knows when you're home. And worse, he knows the nights you're not. Then I remembered the dog. A couple weeks back he'd made a crack about a dog that wouldn't quit barking. And I'd agreed with him fast, before it even landed, that I had not been the one to bring up a dog. It was my neighbor's dog. The one at the back fence that goes off at nothing, every night, around the same time. He knew it barked, and he knew roughly when, which meant that on at least one night, while I sat inside certain I was alone, that man had been standing close enough to the back of my house, in the dark, to hear it. And then one night, in the middle of nothing, he told me I really ought to get that porch light fixed. I had a bulb out over the front door. It had been out about a week. I had never, in 3 years, said one single word to that man about a porch, or a light, or the front of my house. He had stood close enough to my own front door, in the dark, to see that a bulb was dead. That was the night I stopped calling it paranoia. I had to know I wasn't inventing it. So I set a trap, and it's the one part of this I'm a little proud of. The next night, online, easy as anything, I let it slip that I was driving up to see family that weekend, that the house would sit empty till Monday. It was a lie. I didn't go anywhere. I left my car in the driveway where it always sits, killed every light in the place, and sat on my own living room floor for 2 nights with my back to the couch and one slat of the blinds bent down, watching the street, feeling like I'd lost my mind. Friday gave me nothing, and I almost let myself believe it. Then Saturday, late, well after midnight, a car I didn't know came down the block slow. It slowed down even more as it drew level with my driveway, where my car sat in plain view for a house that was supposed to be empty. And then it eased back up to speed and was gone. No face, no plate, but I had my answer, and it was worse than the not knowing. I told a voice in a headset my house was empty, and inside of 2 days, something had driven out to confirm it, so I burned it all down. New gamertag, new handles, new email. Scrubbed myself off every account we had ever shared, and I told myself that was the end of it. For about a week I slept. Then a message landed on a brand new account I had told no living person about, from a handle I had never seen, and it was 2 words. New headset. I'd bought one 2 days earlier. I had mentioned it to nobody, anywhere, because there was no longer a single person on those accounts to mention it to. He hadn't lost me when I vanished. He had simply waited for me to show back up, and watched me do it. The messages kept coming after that, from accounts I'd never see twice. One a week, and then more than that. Always short. Always something only a person watching could know. A line about the jacket I'd worn to the store. A note about how late I'd gotten in on a Tuesday. Never a threat. Exactly. Which was the worst of it, because there was nothing in a single one of them a person could take to anyone. Just a patient, steady reminder that vanishing online hadn't moved me 1 inch in the place that mattered. The place where he already knew which house was mine and what was parked in front of it. After that, every car on the street was his. One night a sedan sat across from my place with its lights off, and I stood at the edge of the window for the better part of an hour, not moving, before I broke and called the non-emergency line. An officer rolled by a while later, and it turned out to be somebody's cousin, 2 doors down, completely innocent. The relief lasted about 10 seconds. Then the real shape of it settled back onto me, which was that I would do the exact same thing the next night, and the night after that, because one innocent car proves nothing when you don't know what his looks like, and he knows yours down to the color. Then the dog went off one night at the back fence, the same dog, at the same nothing, and I stood at my back window in the dark, and the yard felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite make resolve. A shape near the fence line that turned back into an ordinary shadow the second I made myself really look at it. In the morning, there was a cigarette stubbed out on the corner of my back step, smoked all the way down to the filter. I don't smoke. No one had a single reason to be back there. Somebody had stood at my back door, in the dark, long enough to finish a cigarette, while I slept 8 feet away on the other side of the wall. It ended the way these things end, which is that he got bold. And bold is the thing that finally gets them caught. I came home near dawn, wrecked off a shift, and my headlights swept across the front of the house as I pulled in, and there was something sitting on the top step. I knew what it was before I was out of the car. In the game, for 3 years, we'd had this dumb little mascot, a stupid private joke that only the 2 of us in the entire world would ever understand. Someone had left a real one, a physical one, sitting square in the center of my top step. Turned deliberately to face the door, set down careful, like a gift, like a signature. I didn't touch it. I sat in my own driveway with the engine still running and understood, all at once, that he had stood right there on my boards, crouched down, set that thing gently in place, squared it to my door, and then walked back off into the dark to wait for me to come home and find his joke waiting for me. He had driven into my life from 2 states over. He had done it before. To another guy he used to game with, the exact same slow, patient way. He went to prison. I moved in the end. New city, the whole expensive start over, because a voice 2 states off decided, at some point I will never be able to pin down, to stop being only a voice. People tell me they would never let a stranger get that close. You already have. You've got years of small, harmless things out there right now, scattered across every server and every thread you ever let your guard down inside of, and somewhere a patient person might be reading them, deciding whether you're worth the drive. I play with the mic off now. Solo. I miss it more than I can say, and I miss it a lot less than I'd miss not knowing who's parked outside.
He never stole a single one of my photos. I handed him all 200 of them myself, on purpose, smiling, 1 muffin at a time. That's the part nobody believes, so it's the part one put first now. By the way, I'm Nadia, 27. I bake. I ran a little account for the shop, the kind 1,000 small businesses run, latte art and morning light through the front window, and the dog asleep by the register. Nothing a single soul would think twice about. That's what I need you to sit with, because everyone assumes you had to be reckless, posting something you shouldn't. I wasn't posting my address. I was posting muffins. And it turns out muffins are plenty if a man is patient and you are consistent, and the whole point of an account like that, the only way it works at all, is that you are consistent. He never messaged me one threatening thing. That's why it took so long. That's why it took 200. He liked things. Normal things. For months. A man liking your latte art is not a horror story. You know, it's a Tuesday. What I could not see, because I had no reason to look, was what he was doing with the pictures on his side of the screen.
He wasn't looking at them.
He was reading them, the way you'd read a map. The coffee cup in the corner of one photo came from a shop 2 blocks from my apartment. The edge of a street sign clipped into the side of another. The same tree, the same angle, the same time of morning, a dozen mornings in a row, until my walk to work had a timestamp on it. And one evening I posted a sunset out my own window, just because the sky was good, and that one handed him the direction my apartment faced. The roof lines along the bottom narrowed it to a building. A later one, a different night, gave him the floor. I knew none of that yet. He knew all of it. He was already most of the way to my door, and I was still just a girl posting her mornings, a little pleased that a quiet new follower liked everything I made. The first time any of it touched the real world, it was small. I posted a picture from a park on a Sunday, just the light, just the afternoon, and there was a man on a bench in the background, turned toward the camera. I clocked him for half a second and I left, and I told myself it was nothing. It's a park. People sit in parks. Then it was the shop. A man on the sidewalk across the street, a little too still, a little too many mornings in a row to keep explaining away. I started noticing him before I would let myself admit I was noticing him, which is its own particular dread, your body keeping a file your mind refuses to open. So, I tested it. I changed my whole morning for a week, different route, different time, a different door into the shop, and I told myself that when the sidewalk stayed empty, I would finally let it go. For a few days it was empty, and my shoulders came down. Then he was back, same spot, same hour, as if he had simply waited for me to run out of new ways to arrive. One morning I made myself look straight across at him, the way you do when you need it to just be a man waiting for a bus. He didn't look away. He held it, and then he smiled just a little like we shared something, and I went into the back and locked the office door and sat on the floor until my hands were mine again. It came home after that. Literally. One night, I was carrying groceries up to my building and there was a man across the street, not walking, just standing, his face tipped up toward the units. I told myself he was waiting on a ride. But lying awake later, I counted up which floor his eyes had seemed fixed on, and it was mine. A few days after that, a delivery I never ordered was sitting against my actual apartment door. No sender. One bag of the cheap Kroger store brand coffee I buy, the exact kind, which is a thing you could only know honestly if you had stood close enough to watch me carry it out of a store. I put it down the trash chute and I did not sleep, and I told myself I was being dramatic, and somewhere I think now a patient man was very pleased about exactly how little I slept. What finally took my legs out was a comment. He left it on a photo I had posted maybe 3 minutes earlier, and it said something kind about the shirt I had on in the picture. Except I was still wearing that shirt. I was standing in it, right then, reading the comment, which meant he was not looking at the photo. He was looking at me and then down at the photo, and then back up at me, close enough to do both at once. Same shirt. Same minute. Same street. After that I stopped pretending. I started screenshotting all of it, every empty account, building my own version of the file he was building on me. And 2 days later, he made the file easy, because a message arrived from an account with no photo and no posts, and it was a picture of my building's lobby, taken from inside the front door, the door you need a key fob to get through. He wasn't on my street anymore. He'd gotten into the building. I went to the police with my own phone, full of evidence I had made myself, 200 breadcrumbs I scattered down the street without ever once knowing I was dropping them. They took it seriously, and I was lucky because he had left enough of a trail in the real world that they found him. What was in his apartment is the thing I can't put down. My whole feed was up on his wall. Printed. Ordered. Not pinned up like a shrine, and I almost wish it had been a shrine because a shrine is a sick man in love, and I could nearly understand a sick man in love. This was a logistics board. My face circled. Times written in the margins. The mornings I opened. The nights I closed, arrows running between them. And one photo on that wall that I had never posted anywhere of my own front door, taken from the hallway at night. He had not pulled that one off my feed. He had stood there in the dark, inside the building, and taken himself, and then carried it home and pinned it up with the rest, the single picture in the entire collection that was his and not mine. He had done the same thing to 2 other women whose accounts were every bit as ordinary as mine.
He's away now.
I still bake. I still post. But everything goes up a day late now. Never live. Never where I am while I am still standing in it. Because the girl who posts her morning in the morning is handing the patient ones the one thing they cannot get on their own, which is exactly where to stand and when. People think the dangerous account is the private one, the one with something to hide. It isn't. It's the one you keep public because it is only muffins. It is always only muffins. Right up until it is a man inside your building who already knows what floor you are on, smiling like the two of you share a secret.
We do now.
He is the only person alive who knows how many of my ordinary mornings I gave away before I noticed that anyone at all had been counting them.
I had a roller bag in one hand and 6 years of friendship sitting in my chest and about 4 seconds to decide what to do with the fact that the man holding a sign with my name on it was not the man I had flown 2,000 miles to finally meet. 4 seconds. Hold on to that number, because the 6 years is the thing that almost walked me out to his car. I'll call myself Grant. I'm 31. I'm a freelance illustrator, which means I keep strange hours, and most of the people I talk to in a day, I talk to through a screen. I met Soul in an online art community 6 years back, when we were both nobodies, posting work nobody looked at. We critiqued each other at 2 in the morning. We talked every single day. We built a kind of friendship that's, honestly, realer than half the in-person ones people have, because it's all words and no performance. Nobody reading the room. Nobody watching your face. Just the two of you and what you actually think. Soul was my best friend, and in 6 years, I had never once been in the same room as him. The photos he'd sent me over the years were consistent, and that should have been the comforting part. It turned out to be the worst part. Same face, aging the right amount, a little more line around the eyes each winter. Same studio behind him, same posters on the same wall, same chip mug by the same lamp, and every work-in-progress shot. I never had a reason to doubt a single picture, because they all agreed with each other. That's the trick I didn't understand until much later. A liar who plans far enough ahead doesn't slip, because he isn't improvising. He builds a whole consistent person out of nothing, brick by patient brick, over years. A person who only has to hold together for one single day. The day you finally show up. There was one thing, if I'm honest, that I had to talk myself past more than once. We never video called. 6 years, and not one time did I see him move or hear his voice live. There was always a reason, and the reasons were always ordinary. His camera was broken. His Wi-Fi was bad that week. He hated how he looked on video, which, who doesn't? Any single one of those is nothing. The kind of thing a real friend says, and you never think about again. It's only when you lay all 6 years of them down in a row, the way I've done about 4,000 times since, that they stop looking like a shy guy with a bad webcam and start looking like the one rule a man would never break, not once, no matter how close we got, because breaking it a single time would have ended the whole thing in a second. So when a convention landed in his city, Chicago, I told him I was coming. I'll be honest, I was nervous the good way. The way you are right before something you've wanted for a long time. We planned the whole weekend. He knew my flight. He knew the hour I'd land. And he asked me, kind of laughing about it, not to tell our mutual friends I was coming, so we could post a photo together and surprise everyone at once. It was a sweet idea. I loved it. I told no one the specifics. I can see now that I had just agreed, cheerfully, to make sure that not one person who knew me would know which city I was in, or who I was there to meet. On the single day it would matter. Flying across the country to finally stand next to my best friend felt like the most natural thing in the world, and I want to say that plainly, because I know how this ends, and I still don't think I was a fool for going. 6 years. You'd have gone too. Don't tell me you wouldn't have gone. I came down the escalator, scanning the crowd for the face I'd known for 6 years. That's what your brain does. It goes looking for the familiar one, and I was actually smiling. I had my hand half up to wave, and the face wasn't there. I scanned again, slower, telling myself he was just running late, parking, stuck in a line somewhere. I went all the way to the bottom of that escalator, still looking for a man who was never going to be in the crowd. And then a man stepped out of it holding a sign with my name on it. My actual name, handprinted. held up at chest height the way a driver holds one. And for 1 second my whole body relaxed, because I thought, okay, Soul couldn't make it himself. He sent someone. That's so much. That's so like him. And then the man lowered the sign and looked right at me and said my name. Said it soft. Said it like he'd known me for years. Because he had. The man holding that sign knew everything. The names of my pets. My sister's name. The project I'd been stuck on for 8 months and complained about constantly. The inside jokes, 6 years of them. The ones you genuinely cannot fake because you weren't there for them. Except he had been there for them. He was the person I'd been talking to the whole time. The words had all been his. Every word, every late-night critique, every joke. 6 years of the realest friendship I had. Just not the face. Never the face. He smiled and said Soul's name like it belonged to him. Warm and easy. And told me to come on. The car was this way. He planned the whole weekend. He knew a place I'd love. And I stood there on the tile with my bag and felt the 6 years and the 4 seconds pulling against each other hard enough to tear. Because every instinct I'd built over 6 years was screaming that this was my best friend and I should go with him. And one small, newer, animal thing in me was screaming the opposite. And for 4 full seconds, I genuinely did not know which one I was going to obey. What saved me was that an airport is the one place a planner like that can't fully own. Too many people, too many cameras, too many bored officers with nothing to do. I told him I needed the restroom. I said it easy, normal, bag still in my hand, like a man who'll be right back in 2 minutes. He nodded. He even pointed me toward it. Helpful. And that helpfulness is the part that's in my dreams now. The careful way he wanted to be sure I found my way. I walked into the crowd, and I did not come out the other side. I didn't look back, because I knew if I looked back and saw him watching me, I'd lose my nerve and smile and wave and go, and the 6 years would win. I kept moving until I found the first uniform I saw, by a coffee kiosk, and I told him, quiet, that a man down by the escalators was waiting for me, and was not who he said he was. And I put the sign with my name on it into his hands, because it was the only piece of evidence I had, and because I could not stand to hold it for 1 more second. What they turned up, once they had a real name to pull, was pattern. Other people, other 6-year friendships, other airports in other cities, and at least one trip somewhere that had not ended with somebody walking off into a crowd. For a long time afterward, the part that kept me up wasn't the airport. It was the drive home from it, when it landed on me how much he still had. The man at the escalator went home empty-handed that day, but he didn't go home with nothing. He'd had 6 years. He had my real name, my sister's name, the city I live in, every soft, ordinary detail I had ever handed a best friend across 1,000 late nights. None of that had changed. The only thing different now was that I knew he existed, and he knew that I knew. And somewhere out there a patient man was holding a complete picture of someone who had just refused, at the last possible second, to walk to his car. I never found out who Soul actually was. The real one. Whether the photos were a real person or a face stitched together out of strangers, whether there was ever anyone behind the work at all. I lost a 6-year friendship that turned out to have never existed, and that is its own specific kind of grief. Mourning someone who was a costume the whole time. I still work online. The internet gave me my entire career. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but I don't fly to anyone anymore. And if a friendship can only finally happen 2,000 miles from everyone who would miss me, I've started asking why the distance was always part of the plan. Sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes it really is just distance and 2 people who finally get to meet. The one time it isn't, you're already standing at the bottom of an escalator with a bag in your hand, and it is already too late to have asked sooner.